Dear ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the analyst call of Rocket Internet SE. At our customer's request, this conference will be recorded. As a reminder, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. After the presentation, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. If any participant has difficulties hearing the conference, please press star key followed by 0 on a telephone for operator assistance. May I now hand you over to Bettina Kurze, who will lead you through this conference. Please go ahead, madam.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the earnings call for Rocket Internet and selected companies for the fiscal year 2019. As in the past, you find our results presentation on our investor relations sections of the corporate website. If you please go to page 4, you can see the stakes in our selected companies. These are unchanged relative to November 2019. So in Home24, we hold 11%, and in Global Fashion Group, 18%. The one change compared to end of last year, we no longer hold a stake in Jumia. Global Fashion Group, with its regional brands, The Iconic in Australia, Zalora in Southeast Asia, La Moda in CIS, and Graffiti in Latin America, grew revenue by 17% year-on-year to 1.3 billion euros in 2019. Similarly, Home24, with its pure-play home and living e-commerce platform in continental Europe and Brazil, grew revenue by 20% to 372 million euros in 2019. Both growth rates are on a constant FX basis, but were also quite similar on a euro basis. For the full year 2019, Global Fashion Group had a 1.5 percentage point adjusted EBITDA margin improvement to -3% for the full year. However, the company was adjusted EBITDA positive during Q4 2019. Home24 made very significant progress in 2019 and was able to improve its adjusted EBITDA margin by 5 percentage points from -13% in 2018 to -8% in 2019. During Q4 2019, Home24 was adjusted EBITDA margin positive with 2%. Europe was 1% positive, and Brazil was at 7%. Global Fashion Group performed well operationally in 2019, which is the foundation for the positive financial performance in terms of revenue growth and adjusted EBITDA improvement. The number of orders grew from 28 million to 35 million in 2019, an increase of 23%. During Q4 2019, La Moda and CIS had a particularly strong performance. Net merchandise value reached 194.5 million in Q4, a 25% increase over Q4 2018. Please note that Global Fashion Group will issue a revised guidance for 2020 as soon as the impact of COVID-19 on the business will become clearer. Similarly, Home24 had a 15% order growth in 2019 to 2.2 million orders. The company managed to grow revenue even faster than orders, namely by 19% in 2019 due to improved order intake and revenue realization. The European business grew by 16% in 2019 to 278 million euros. The Latin American business grew by 28% to 93 million euros and so contributes roughly 1/4 of revenue. Rocket Internet has launched 20 new business models in the past 2 years. Also for these companies, the impact from Corona is currently being felt. Rocket Internet's network of companies has grown to over 200 companies. When you look at page 10, the values here are as of year-end 2019. So the cost of the private portfolio was 0.4 billion euros, and the internally ascribed fair value as of year-end 2019 was at circa 1.1 billion euros. As in the past, let me reiterate that valuations are subject to significant limitations and should not be read as an indication for the price that third parties would be willing to pay in a future financing round, a potential trade sale, or a potential initial public offering. In addition, as of today, COVID-19 is a developing situation with to date unknown duration and very significant negative economic impact. The recent COVID-19 outbreak and related post-year-end market conditions may have a significant impact on the total fair value of the private companies. Such events are beyond the company's control, and the likelihood that they may occur and the effect or the estimate of their impact on the total fair value cannot be predicted today. With that, let us have a look at the 2019 consolidated financials for Rocket Internet SE. Consolidated revenue increased by 51% to 67 million euros. Revenue in our case is primarily comprised of revenue of the fully consolidated companies and interest income from lending activity. Income from associates and joint ventures was 20 million lower than in 2018. This line captures proportionate losses from companies consolidated under the equity method, as well as disposal gains and losses from, for example, HelloFresh, Jumia, and Westwing. Finance cost and income reflect primarily the result from companies consolidated at fair value. On a net basis, this was 119 million euros positive in 2019. All in all, we had an improved consolidated profit for the year of 280 million euros in 2019, which translates into €1.90 earnings per share. The balance sheet total for 2019 is almost unchanged from 2018 at 4.2 billion euros, and also total non-current assets is also quite comparable to last year. Please note that subscribed capital shown here in the balance sheet is still at 150.8 million. However, post the share buyback program announced and executed in December 2019, shares were cancelled in Q1, so that now the new shares issued is 137.2 million shares, and shares outstanding is 135.7 million. You can find the precise numbers on our website under the share section. To preempt some of your questions about what happened since the start of the corona pandemic, we have updated the numbers on page 14 for as of end of March 2020. Net cash was at 2.1 billion euros, and we've provided further disclosure now around the public stock by splitting it into liquid stock and low liquidity stock. The liquid stock had roughly 300 million worth of stocks in there, and the low liquidity stock was at roughly 100 million. In addition, the company had granted loans worth 600 million euros. And as of end of March 2020, COVID-19 is a developing situation with to date unknown duration and very significant negative economic impact. The recent COVID-19 outbreak and related post-year market conditions may have significant impact on the loan portfolio granted. Such events are beyond the company's control, and the likelihood that they may occur and the effect or the estimate of the impact on the loan portfolio granted cannot be predicted. Let me give you a brief update on the Rocket Internet Capital Partners Fund. The first fund was launched in 2016 and has drawn and invested circa 80% of its commitment. Rocket Internet is also a limited partner in the first fund with 15% of commitments. The second Rocket Internet Capital Partners Fund held its final close in January 2020 with over 1.1 billion of commitments, of which Rocket Internet holds 11%. Circa 100 million are drawn and invested from Fund 2. These funds allow us to leverage our own capital. And then with regards to the financial calendar, as of today, we don't have any changes to announce to the financial calendar, but we are, of course, watching the development of the pandemic. And if anything were to change, we would update you in due course. With that, operator, please open it up for questions.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We will now begin our question and answer session. If you have a question for our speakers, please dial 01 on your telephone keypad now to enter the queue. Once your name has been announced, you can ask a question. If you find your question is answered before it's your turn to speak, you can dial 02 to cancel your question. If you are using speaker equipment today, please lift the handset before making your selection. One moment, please, for the first question. And the first question received is from Christoph Bast of Bankhaus Lampe. Your line is now open, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, Bettina. I have actually 3 questions. So the first one, could you elaborate a bit on the development of net cash, liquid stocks, and granted loans compared to the last published numbers? Is it fair to say that out of the 500 million decline in net cash, 300 million were invested in loans given to your portfolio companies and 200 million were regular investments? And I guess the decline in liquid stocks, is that due to divestments or based rather on a lower share price? That would be the first one. The second one on Traveloka. Again, I mean, this is probably one of your most prominent portfolio companies. And against the background of the current crisis and the impact in particular on global online travel, are you able to make any comments about the operating performance of Traveloka or about your long-term commitment to this company? And the third and last one is, you stated that since 2018 you have incubated only 20 new businesses, but at the same time, the Rocket Internet Fund 1 has drawn 800 million. So I thought this fund would act as a co-investor to the Rocket Internet SE. So how does that fit together? Rocket Internet invests only in 20 companies, but the fund has already drawn 800 million euros. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
All right. So thank you, Christoph. Let's take them maybe one by one. So on page 14, which was your first question, sort of how net cash changed relative to the numbers we reported in November. I think the major adjusting items there that you were aware of also maybe during the quarter, the last couple of months, is that we resolved the cross-shareholding with United Internet. So we tendered a portion of our shares into United Internet's share buyback program. They, in return, tendered their shares into our share buyback program. But on a net basis, this was a cash outflow for us. Then on the loans granted, those were roughly 300 million at the end of November and is now at 600 million. So that's an increase there. So that was cash outflow. And then, yes, of course, there's also some ongoing regular investing activity that has an impact on cash that we did not break out on a company-by-company basis. Yeah.
Okay.
With regards, does that make sense? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And then with regards to Traveloka, unfortunately, it's still the same as in the past that we can't really comment on the company, neither on operating performance nor on funding rounds. And then lastly, with regards to the Rocket Internet Capital Partners Fund, I mean, they co-invest with Rocket Internet not only in incubated companies, but also in investment opportunities that we find. So the capital deployment there is into all the equity opportunities that we see in the market and that we choose to invest in. In addition to Rocket Internet's commitment in the fund, Rocket Internet is also always investing 20% of our allocation directly, plus then indirectly via the fund, so that economically on a look-through basis, you get to roughly 30% capital provided from the balance sheet. Yeah.
But do I understand it correctly that the fund invested already 800 million euros, so the drawn amount is comparable
Since
to
2016.
Okay, but isn't that significantly more than Rocket Internet invested?
Well, I mean, some of that money is from Rocket Internet, right, and some of it is from external third parties.
Okay, I leave it that way. Okay, thank you, Bettina.
All right.
And the next question received is from Nicolas Mauder of Kepler Cheuvreux. Your line is now open, so please go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my questions as well. 3 from my side. Continuing with the new information provided on the Capital Partners Fund, is the value of the fund investment reflected in the private company portfolio or somewhere else in the financial reserve, or how should we think about this additional information? How does it reconcile with what you gave us previously? Second one, any color on the potential impact on the loan portfolio and the private companies from COVID-19? I know you already made the disclaimer, and I think you won't give much more, but maybe you can answer the question whether you have already saw companies in those portfolios failing, i.e. reducing their values between the end of the year and the day of and today. And finally, a bit of color would be appreciated on your exposure to the company Revolut. There have been repeated press articles regarding your involvement in the company, both on equity and debt. Color appreciated here on who actually holds those stakes. Is it in the capital partners funds, i.e., and then is it reflected in the private company portfolio? Which debts have you invested into the company? Some things like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicholas. So basically, our participation in the Rocket Internet Capital Partners Fund, and therefore our indirect sort of holding of private companies, is reflected in the private company numbers. So you don't need to add that on top. So if you basically just take the numbers given in the presentation, that's already included there. You're asking basically if it's already sort of visible in March that there's more companies failing. I mean, generally there's always some companies failing in a large portfolio. It's just the nature of venture capital also. Yes, we expect to see more companies having a hard time in the coming months and weeks as sort of growth and revenue is severely impacted for some of the companies. And then lastly, with regards to Revolut, yes, we had disclosed also in the past that we made an equity investment there that's partially in the fund and partially also directly on the balance sheet. And then Rocket Internet has also provided debt directly to Revolut, which is the fund.
Okay. Thank you very much. I guess now because I couldn't find it in the list of holdings in the annual report. I guess it must be in some sort of sub entity then. And regarding the question number 2, whether you already saw companies failing, having discussed Traveloka and Revolut, which should be larger parts of the private company portfolio total fair value. Where do you expect to sort of the hammer to fall hardest from COVID-19, or on the early stage company, or do you envisage larger or more mature companies coming into trouble?
I think it's too early to tell at this point. We, I guess, have to wait and see for the coming months and weeks. And I think it's all very individual based on business model, funding and situation, how this will impact the companies. So we're working very closely with our portfolio companies, but it's not a one size fits all. It's really a very bespoke and individual to their situation, the way we're working with them.
But I guess given your net cash position, you're willing to prop up those companies that you have conviction in if they get into trouble due to circumstances they cannot control.
Yes, I mean, both through the fund and the balance sheet, we obviously do still have cash available to invest in, to sort of support companies with good teams and good business models. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
And the next question is from Sarah Simon of Berenberg. Your line is now open, madam. Please go ahead.
Yes, hi. I've got a few questions. First one was on Jumia, which you seem to have dropped reference to. Is your holding in Jumia within the low liquidity stock category, or have you sold out completely? Second one was on the loan. So you've told us now that the loans include a loan to Revolut, but can you give us a bit more color on what other companies are in there? And generally speaking, when you look at, you've got a huge cash pile. Ollie's been fairly explicit in the past that he felt valuations were too high. So now you've got a big cash pile, valuations are much lower. As you think about doing more investment, First of all, are you going to stay with your big net cash position, or are you going to put it to work now valuations have gone down? And if the latter, how are you thinking about companies that you know well that might need capital, i.e. former portfolio companies, as compared to new companies that you don't know as well? Because obviously there are former rocket companies that need capital, which seemingly you would be able to provide quite easily at more limited risk to you in the sense that you know those businesses well. Thanks.
Thanks, Sarah. So Jumia is not included in the low liquidity stocks. We currently don't have a holding in Jumia. So what's included in the low liquidity stocks currently, for example, are our stakes in Global Fashion Group, Home24, and Westwing.
Okay, so you're out of Jumia entirely now?
Yes.
Okay.
And in the more liquid stocks, you have companies, let's say, like United Internet, Tele Columbus, and other publicly listed companies that are bigger and fairly liquid. We just wanted to provide that additional detail, because some obviously would also be much easier to realize that certain others with low liquidity. Then your question on the loan portfolio. So Revolut is a large position in that loan portfolio. The other loans are much more, I guess, diversified, and it's mostly venture loans to companies in the internet sector, and most of these have been granted pre-corona, so up until February.
Yeah.
And your question with regards to cash, as in the past, we'll hold it that we don't really pre-announce sort of how we're going to deploy it or what kind of opportunities. But yes, I mean, we are also looking at opportunities in this market environment. Public valuations, as you all have seen, have come down significantly. Private markets tend to be a bit slower to adjust, but we also expect opportunities in the private markets as well.
And generally speaking, would you say you have a preference for investing in companies that are already public, so that you have a sort of more obvious exit route, or are you, assuming that private market valuations adjust, are you equally as interested in those?
I mean, we really look at it on a case-by-case basis, company by company. Mm-hmm. We currently still have very significant cash balance, so it's not necessarily exclusive, one excluding the other. So I think it's really just each opportunity on its own merit.
Okay, great, thanks.
The next question received is from Markus Diebel of JP Morgan. Your line is now open, so please go ahead.
Hi, Bettina. Maybe following up on Sarah's question, I still would find it very helpful to get an idea about the use of cash, because on the one hand, you're very likely to now deploy cash into new ventures, given valuations have come down. On the other hand, probably you have to inject cash into current companies in the portfolio. Could you help us to understand what kind of like your firepower, if you want to call it like this, actually is in the current market to invest in new assets? Yeah, that would be quite helpful. How do you find the right balance here? And then secondly, on Jumia, in November, I got the impression that this was still a core holding for you. Then you seem to have sold it quite at the low. Yeah, I think that there might be some criticism from some investors that's similar to HelloFresh. You sold too early. Yeah, and now we've got the cash for this asset. So how do you also answer questions on timing of those disposals when it seems there's no need for now to run this size of balance on the cash pile? Thank you.
Thank you, Markus. So, I mean, use of cash and sort of firepower to make investments between, I guess, the balance sheet liquidity that we have plus what's in the new fund is significant at this point. At the same time, I mean, there's very large uncertainty in the markets at this point, and also to be seen how this is shaking out and what kind of opportunities the next couple of months will provide or not. So we're obviously very actively monitoring the market, our portfolio, and so on. But also, as in the past, don't really want to commit to putting a number out of how much will be invested in the coming months, right? And usually during times of large uncertainty, or so, it might also take a while for new pricing levels to be found, especially in the private markets. Yeah. And on Jumia, we sort of founded the company 7-8 years ago. Supported it during its growth phase, took the company public. Now no longer have a board seat or had a board seat post IPO in the company, and sort of also had less control over the company. So that was the reason for us to sort of exit the company at that point. But obviously, I wish the company luck and hope it will develop well.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
And the next question is from Nizla Naizer of Deutsche Bank. Your line is now open, madam. Please go ahead.
Great, thank you. Bettina, I just wanted to confirm, how much do you still own in United Internet and Tele Columbus? And what else is in that liquid stocks portfolio that's worth 300 million as of end March? Secondly, in the 20 business models that you've said you've incubated in FY19, could you just give us a breakdown of which sectors they were in, and which sectors are more interesting to you as a company on the private side going forward? Thank you.
Okay. So United Internet, we held over 5% in December, then tendered a significant stake into the share buyback program, dropped below 3%. And then we recently filed again a voting rights notification saying that we had above 3% of the company. As for Tele Columbus, we currently have a 10% stake in the company. And sorry, your second question was on the private sector, which subsectors we find interesting in the private portfolio?
Yes, and also the 20 companies that you incubated in 2019, which sectors were they in?
Yes. So there are various sectors and also geographically quite diverse. So we have looked at some prop tech models. We have some consumer-focused companies on there, like Weitable. We also have some more B2B focused businesses in there in terms of logistics, procurement. So it's really a rather broad, and also some financial services. So it's a really rather broad spectrum that we are looking at, and sort of also mirrors what we are investing in the private portfolio. It's consumer marketplaces, but also very broadly other sectors like fintech, real estate tech, some health tech that we find interesting at this point, and where we see new developments.
Great. And Bettina, in the other liquid sort of stocks, are there any other large cap names that you've previously referred to, like Tencent, etc. back in the day? Are they still in there in that 300 million that we talk of?
Yes, next to United Internet and Tele Columbus, there's also some other large public listed tech stocks in there.
Great. You can't disclose which they are, is it?
No, at this point we don't really want to. Thank you.
Okay.
And the next question is from Albrecht von Witzleben Asset Management. Your line is now open, so please go ahead.
Yeah, just two quick questions. One on West Wing. Any particular reason why you're not showing it under selected companies, since you're owning 25%, which is double the value or roughly double the value of your holding in Home24? And the other question would be on interest on your cash. Is there any negative interest? Up to now, you always said you don't have to pay negative interest on that balance.
Yeah, I mean, so for West Wing, I mean, we had exited the company and then also rebought a 25% stake in the company subsequently when the share price had dropped significantly. And that's the reason why we sort of don't report them as part of the selected companies anymore. And the second question with regards to negative interest, no, currently up until today, we have not had to incur negative interest on the cash balance.
Okay, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we take the next question, just a reminder, if you would like to ask a question, please press 01 on the telephone keypad now. And the next question is from Nicolas Maurer of Kepler Cheuvreux. The line is now open. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking one follow-up. I hope it's okay. On governance, is the two-person board as of today sustainable, or are you looking into the option of hiring someone like a CFO? Thank you.
For right now, we're actually very happy with the current management team overall, and I think it also extends beyond the management board. We have 2 management board members at this point, but below that, we also have a group of people who've been with the business for a very long time and are running the various functions also for the corporate business and on the investment side and on the company incubation side. So we actually feel quite comfortable with the current setup. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Again, as a reminder, if you would like to ask a question, please press 01 on the telephone keypad now. We received no further questions, so I hand back to Mrs. Kotze.
Well, thank you very much all for dialing in. I take it many of you are probably also in your home offices and following the call. So thank you for joining us today, and keep well, and speak with you again in May, when we report the Q1 results. Thank you very much. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attendance. This call has been concluded. You may disconnect.